sewing the lining. As always, I'm gonna start going and I'm gonna back up. The stitching is going to be on the inside of the project, so nobody will see this. Just doing a small seam allowance. And I did not put my fabric, I did not pin it, which I should have, so I'm having a little bit of slippage. Because this fabric is, it's a little bit slick. Okay, I'm gonna back stitch. Okay, then I'm gonna put my needle down. I'm gonna go forward, put my needle down, and turn my work. And now I'm doing the seam. I'm sewing the bottom of the lining. Let's see, needle down and adjust my fabric. When you're sewing, if you find that your fabric kind of slips or get bunched up, you can always stop and readjust it. This is going to be the bottom of the lining. All right, I'm going to stop right there, go back a couple, stop, put my needle down. Okay, I need to take a couple more stitches. Okay, needle down and spin my work. Okay, and I have my presser foot lined up with the edge of my fabric. Okay, now here's something that's very important. I'm sewing my lining fabric, okay? I sewed down one side, across the bottom, and up the other side. I am going to leave an opening about the width of my hand, okay? This is going to be for turning. So I'm going to go ahead and take my fabric out. I back stitched to lock in these stitches. And now I'm going to come up to about right here. So I have an opening about the size of my hand. So I'm going to go forward and then I'm going to go backward. I'm going forward and I'm going backwards. Okay, that should be enough to make these stitches really strong. So now I'm going to continue forward and go all the way up the side of my bag. Okay, I went all the way up and I'm going backwards. Okay. Okay, so this is my lining. this is not going to be seen. This thread is going to be on the inside. So I don't mind that it's black. And it's also going to help you to see it very well for the purpose of the tutorial. So here's my lining bag. And I have sewed about a 1/2 inch seam. There's the first seam down the side of the bag. There's my seam across the bottom of the bag. And then on my next seam on the top of the bag, you see a big space. I sewed to here, I backstitch forward, backstitch, then I skip down to here. So here's an opening about the size of my hand. And that is how I'm going to turn my project right side out, okay? So I've sewed my lining very carefully. I am going to use my pinking shears. I love pinking shears. But one thing that's important when you're making a bag or when you're making anything and you leave your opening for turning, where you have left that opening, you do not want to trim your seam because you're going to need that fabric. You trim the rest of your seams, but where you leave an opening for turning, you do not want to trim that seam because you're going to need that fabric to fold that fabric under for your seam, where you're going to close up that hole once you get to that point in your project. So I'm pinking everything except for the part where I left that hole, okay? I'm going to leave plenty of fabric. See how I just I used my pinking shear and I just went right off the edge. I'm going to keep that fabric there because I'm going to need it okay. So we've got the lining finished. Okay. I think I turned my lining right side out. So here's what my lining looks like. See, I have this opening. That's where we're going to turn our work. Okay, so this is my bag. This is my lining. Now let me sew the outer portion of the bag. So I'm going to take my outer portion and I am going to put my fabric pretty side to pretty side. So I put it down, and then I'm going to lay my other fabric on top and match it up pretty side to pretty side. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and use a few pins. I didn't use pins when I was stitching my lining and it was moving on me a little bit. Okay, so before I get started on this outer portion of the bag, I'm putting some pins in and I'm going to compare my, no, that's not going to work. Let's see. This should just be about half a seam. Okay. All right. Okay. So here we go. Okay. I've got my needle over because I need a little bit more of the seam allowance, because my outer bag I believe I made it just, I had to trim my lining. Okay, so I started and I backed up. Okay, I'm going almost to the edge, and I'm going to back up. Okay, put my needle down, and I'm going to pivot. And now I'm going to go across the bottom, and I think it would be a good idea for me to take this out and trim the bottom, because I see where my bag is not even, and I need it to be even. So I'm gonna trim this just a little bit, and this should not mess me up. Okay, that's better. Okay. Okay. Ooh, I thought that was better. Y'all, what's wrong with the way I cut tonight? All right, that's gonna have to be better. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and sew down the other side of my bag. I'm on a back stitch. Okay, I'm going all the way down, and I'm gonna back stitch, put my needle down, and pivot. Okay, this is gonna be across the bottom of my bag, and this is the outer fabric. I'm making a very simple bag, and I'm going to use this for a reusable gift bag for my grandson. Okay, so I have sewed all the way around my outer fabric. I'm going to go ahead and take my pinking shears Now I left an opening on one side of my lining. I did not leave an opening on the outer fabric, just on one side of my lining fabric. Pinking shears are a great way to finish your edges so they don't ravel, which is good. And it also makes it better when you turn your work, because the pinking shears have this little jagged edge that looks like little mountains or little triangles. And that gets rid of some of the bulk in the fabric. And so that helps your project to look better and to help the seams lay better. Okay, so this is my bag. I'm going to take my pins out of the bag. Okay, make sure my threads are clipped. Okay, then I'm going to take my lining. Now I've got my lining turned the right way, okay? So I'm going to put my hand in my lining. Remember, we have this open part, okay? And this is the inside, this is the pretty side of my bag. So what I'm doing right now is I'm tucking the lining inside of the bag, and we've got pretty side to pretty side, and we're going to line up the seams. Let's see. Okay. All right. So what I'm doing, I put my lining bag, I put it inside of my bag, okay? The pretty side of my lining is touching the pretty side of my fabric. My outer fabric is inside out, but my inner fabric is the right way. So that gives us pretty side to pretty side, okay? And I'm going to take each one of my seams and I'm going to line them up together. Let's see. I want a clip. I want a little clip. Where's my little clips? Okay. What I'm going to do, I put my seams together. One seam is going right, one is going left. I'm going to put a little clip right there. I'm clipping that seam together. Then I'm going around to the other side, put one seam one way, one seam the other way. They call that nesting the seams. And I'm going to put the clip in, okay? Right there. So on each seam, I have a clip. And I have the edges of my bag lined up together. Now I'm going to take a pin and I'm going to put a pin on each side of my bag just to help it not shift. So I have, okay, I have a clip on each seam and then I have a pin. And you can use as many clips and as many pins as you want to. Now I'm going to take this free arm off of my sewing machine, or take my table off, and then I will have what we call the free arm. And this is the skinny part. And what you do is you put your bag right around the arm, okay? And what I'm going to be doing right here is I'm going to be stitching around the top of my bag. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start. I went a few stitches and I'm going to back up, okay? I'm going to keep my presser foot on the edge of my outer fabric. And what my goal is when I come around to that other side, I want to be lined up. Okay, I'm going to take this clip out because I'm getting close. But I want to be lined up where I started. Okay, I went over my seam and now I'm going to adjust my bag and I'm going to keep that presser foot lined up. So something important to notice is that when I sewed my lining, I left an opening in the side of my lining for turning. That's very important. Now, something else that is important is lining your seams up and keeping your seams lined up the best you can. And it's also important that you realize that you take the lining of your bag and you put it right side out, and then you take your hand and you put it in that lining and you put it right inside of the outer bag. But your outer bag, what you're looking at, is the wrong side of the fabric, because the right side of the fabric is in the bag and it's touching the right side of the lining, and that's what you want. And then when I come here, if you can see right here, this is where I started stitching. This is where my needle is. And when I get to here, I will have gone all the way around the top of my bag, okay? And what you want is when you go around, you want your needle to hit right there where you started. And mine's pretty good. And then I'm going to do a stitch to back up, okay? And then I'm going to lift my presser foot. Okay. Trimming all my strings. Okay. Now I take the pins out of my bag. I only put 2 in, okay? I take them out. I reach inside of my bag and I feel for where that hole is. Oh boy, I hope I did this right. This is the scary part. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to start turning it inside out. This is the hole that I left in my lining, okay? So through that hole, I'm pushing this fabric through. And what I want to do is turn my bag the right way, okay? And when you turn it the right way, here's what you're going to end up with. It's kind of funny looking. You end up with your lining hanging down, okay? I gotta trim those threads. And the bag is on top. Well, the first thing I'm gonna do, carefully, okay, I'm gonna put my hand inside of this lining. Okay, real carefully, put my hand in there. And I'm gonna put my hand all the way up, and I'm poking the corners out, okay? I'm poking it all the way out. Okay. Then once I've got those, I'm gonna poke the corners of my lining out, okay? And then, remember that hole we left? I'm gonna come here to the hole, and I'm gonna do my fingers like that, putting them one on each side and pulling, and that makes it fold in. And what I can do is I can do what we call edge stitch, and I'm gonna edge stitch that hole closed. And edge stitching means you go to the very edge of your bag and you make a little tiny seam. And we call that edge stitching. Now I could take my iron. Let me make sure I get this correct. I could take my iron, and where these seams have folded in, I could iron them, and that would keep them nice and flat. But I'm just going to go ahead and finger press it, and I'm going to go ahead and get started. Okay. So this is where my hole was left. Getting way over to the edge. Oh, I'm not far enough to the edge. We got to catch that. Okay, let's see. What do I want to do? I'm going to move it, and I'm going to put my needle down. Okay, I'm closer to the edge. You want to get all the way to the edge. And I'm going to back up. I want these stitches locked in really good. Then I'm going to go forward. And I got to keep going until I get that hole closed up. You want to close that whole hole up. You don't want it to come open. And when I know I'm past the hole, I'm gonna back up. Okay, and then I'm gonna just stitch right off the bag. Okay, raise it up. Okay, so let me trim. I probably went a little further than I needed to. That's in the lining. Nobody's going to see it. It's inside of the bag. And it's important that you make sure that you have that hole closed. Okay. Now, I'm going to open my bag, and I'm just going to stuff the lining inside. Okay, I'm stuffing my lining in the bag. I am going to cut my iron on because, let's see, I want to make sure that my edges look good. Dark under here. There we go. Okay, I plugged in my iron. I'm going to make sure I've got my iron on the cotton setting. And this bag, see, I have the bag lined. And what I want to do is I want to go all the way around the outside of this bag, and I want to iron really good so the yellow does not stick out. So you see the blue, you see the yellow gold inside and the blue outside. And once I get it ironed really good, then I'm going to do a top stitch around my bag. So I'm heating that iron up, and then I decide, once I top stitch around the bag, everything will be finished except for I can decide what type of handles that I want to put on the bag. So I'm going to think about that, because probably what I will do, I'm not sure. I think I will probably do, what do they call them? Webbing. I think I will use webbing for my handles. So let's do some trimming. Now I have a video. If you go to my, I have a playlist. It's called beginner sewing videos. And I have a tutorial that shows you exactly how to put your webbing handles on your tote bag, okay? So I'm not going to do that on here, because all you need to do is go to the tutorial that is labeled putting handles on a tote bag, and that will show you exactly how to do it, okay? And this one shows you in detail about how you do your bag. You make sure you line it up pretty side to pretty side. You do your lining, and once you do your lining, you do your outer bag. Always remember to leave the hole in the lining so you can turn your bag the right way. And ironing is a very important part of sewing. Let's see if I can get you. This thing doesn't want to work with me. Come to me. Let's see. Woo! I thought I had it where it would go. Okay, here we go. Here's the ironing board. Okay. I try to remember to keep you guys where you can see what is happening. You know what I think? I think it might be easier to use my little tiny iron. Let's see. One thing I have is I have plenty of irons. Let's see. Let's see what I can unplug. Okay. I'm going to plug in this little iron. This is actually my, this is my Cricut iron, my little tiny one. And I'm going to heat it all the way up. I'm going to move the big iron out of the way. I might use that in a little bit. But right here, I'm going to go around and do a really good pressing. I want my, we'll go all the way inside, giving us some nice creases. Just ironing. And you know what I'm gonna do? Well, no, I'm not. Well, I was thinking about changing my thread, but actually the top stitching on the bag itself in the black, that won't look bad. If I change my bobbin thread to gold, you wouldn't be able to see the stitching inside of the bag, but it doesn't really matter when it's inside the bag anyway. Anyway, I'm going round and round. See how that's making my top of my bag look better? It's making that fabric lay flat. It's going to make it easier for me to top stitch. This is just going to be a gift bag. And then my grandson can use it for a little tote bag. And it started out being 14 inches, about 14 inches long and about 11.5 wide, okay? Now, all right, so I have this nice and ironed. I'm going to tell you, it really does. I've never been much of an ironer, but it really makes a big difference in your sewing projects. It really does. Okay, so I'm going to cut this iron off. I didn't end up using my big one because the little one did a really good job. So let me make sure I unplug this iron. Oops, that wasn't the iron. All right, let's see. Is this the iron? Yep. Okay, so put the iron here. Don't want to get tied up. All right, now I'm going to swing you around to where we can see. I'm going to keep my sewing machine with the free arm exposed because I'm going to do top stitching. I'm going to top stitch all the way around the top of my bag. And I want it to be a small seam allowance. Okay. So I've got my needle in the middle. And very carefully, I'm putting my bag on here. My bag, this edge is nice and flat because I've ironed it. And I am going to keep the edge of my presser foot right here on the edge. And that's going to give me about a quarter inch top stitching all the way around. Now what that's going to do is that is going to keep my lining inside of my bag, which is important. It's going to keep the lining nice and inside of my bag. In addition to keeping the lining inside of my bag, put this needle down. It's slipping a little. It's going to give me a nice top stitching. It's going to give my bag a nice finished look. And the last thing I'm going to have to do is just put my webbing. I'm going to use the webbing for handles. Now you can use webbing for handles, or you can actually take material and use that for handles. There's all kinds of things you can use to put handles on a tote bag. Okay, put that needle down. I'm going to adjust. I want to keep going really nice around here. I will show a picture on the tutorial once I have the webbing on the bag. I'm going to use this for a little gift bag for my grandson. And then he can take it and put little toys or whatever he wants to in it. Another idea that I have is making him a reading pillow. And I still have some of this fabric left. Okay, now I'm coming back to where I started, and it looks like my needle is going to be lined up. The stitching is going to run right into it, and that's what you want. Okay. Okay, so this is my finished tote bag. I don't know if you can see the stitching along the edge. It's lined inside. Let me give a little clip to this thread. So the only thing left is going to be to put the handles on my tote bag. Let me see what colors I have. I think, yeah, I'm going to look around because I believe that I have some black webbing. Whee! Didn't want that to unfold. Okay, so this is some black webbing. And that's what I'm going to use for my handles. And I'm just going to stitch them inside of the bag. So remember, this is banana with So It Seems. And I have done several tutorials making things for my grandson's birthday. And okay, this is his gift bag. I'm going to be putting the handles on there. I don't want our tutorial to last too long. These are some little washcloths I made him with little construction vehicles. This is the little goodie bag I made him. It's going to have his little party favors in it. This is the table runner that has the orange. I made 2 of those. It has the orange on the sides and the blue in the middle. Then I made the table runner, which is the solid blue. And then the last thing I made was the bunting. and we have 10 little flags. So please watch for my tutorials. I apologize when I'm not in the frame. I try to be mindful to show you what I'm doing. Please like and subscribe for more videos. And if you will look on my playlist of beginner sewing, there is some with tote bags. One of them shows you how to box the corners of tote bags, and one of them shows you how to put the actual handles on the tote bag. Thank you for watching.